Hi everybody and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I've got, as always, James Dalton. James.
Kevin.
Marcus.
Was it Kevin?
Or Marquis.
Marquis.
Let's just touch on the Rassie thing again, just before we get into our Super Brew picks. James, what's your thoughts on all the bollocks that's been spoken about?
I cannot believe that he'd be such a traitor. No, it's just quite astounding that there's so much calm and peace and a cloud of success hanging over South African rugby, and that such a spurious allegation should surface. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose it makes for interesting topics of conversation in our rugby. Yeah. But no, Rassie is too loyal to South African rugby, and you know, if that was the case, it would have been very deceitful of him in terms of, you know, removing himself as head coach, yeah, becoming director of rugby, and then planning to an exodus to go and coach the arch nemesis.
Well, he's one thing. Rassie's not as deceitful, is he?
Correct, quite right.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Mark, you've got a bit more insight on after speaking to the Mark Alexander and even Rassie.
Yeah, I think Mark showed very good leadership, because what it called out for was the boss of South African rugby to say he's not going anywhere. Yeah. The confusion there was everyone made the assumption that he had a 6-year contract. Yeah. When he came in 2017, he came in as a director, he was given 6 years, the public went ballistic. The media said, how can you guarantee a guy a 6-year contract? Rassie's response was, well, if I fail, I'll be gone in a year. So 6 years actually means nothing.
It's only a number.
Because you're only judged by the systems he puts in place, the sevens box, the Super Rugby teams, and how the Springboks will do, because the Springbok coach will report into him. That's why Alistair left. He refused to report into Rassie. He then took the ambulance job, as he called it, to get the box right, and kind of has now brought through Jacques Nienaber, his mate. And
won the World Cup.
And won the World Cup, his trusted colleague, to take over, and he remains. I wasn't aware that the 6-year contract didn't actually materialize, and because of the hoo-ha, they kind of agreed on a 4-year contract. So it comes up for renewal end of 2021 after the Lions tour. Speaking to Mark Alexander yesterday, he says it's semantics. The guy's here to go beyond 2023. He's won the World Cup. He says Yuri Roux as CEO, Rassie director, and him as president have worked wonderfully well together. Mm-hmm. It was Yuri Roux and him that wanted him back from Munster. Yeah. And he only was going to come back from Munster on one condition, that he gets responsibility for the Springboks. That's why he left. When he was the high performance manager, Heineke Meyer refused to report into him. And he said, how can you control South African rugby if your chop's not on the block for the box? He says that's where it starts and ends.
Chop
is not on the block. Yeah.
His pillow, you mean?
Yes, pillow. Yeah. So, I think it was very good that Mark came out, was willing to say those things, and hands off the world, hands off England. Yeah. And the one thing, and James and I spoke about it, we spoke about it earlier in the week. I don't think the world in professional rugby has ever seen South Africa so calm with the administration, so cohesive with Super Rugby coaches and a national director, and so strong on the field, both with our European-based players here and with the Springboks also being such a popular team. And then Rassie's videos that he's strategically put out on Twitter and social media of the team talk he gave the guys, of telling the players that he doesn't want any dicks in that Springbok team, because that culture won't be tolerated, and then putting himself there saying, he became entitled for 2 years and it cost him his place in the Springbok squad. So you've just seen this amazing kind of leadership on all levels from South African rugby, and the world doesn't like it.
So what do you say? No one likes to suck dick?
Oh, James.
Let's beep that one.
Yeah, we'll beep that one, James. All right. So maybe some Gary Johnson, but that's about it.
Come on, guys.
All right.
Come on.
All right.
And I'm not an expert at that, obviously, but I imagine there probably is some, James.
It's only a figure of speech, guys. Don't go to the gutter.
You mean suck an egg? Yeah, okay. I want to ask you guys a question. When you talk about the South African legends, and we look back on South Africa, has Rassie written himself into the folklore like the Kitch Christie, the Pienaars?
No, certainly has. I mean, you know, winning a World Cup is
You know, I didn't mention Jake White there.
Oh dear, sorry, Jake. We apologise for omitting you.
No, I did that on purpose.
Absolutely, Kevin. You have to go into folklore and be, have a legacy that is synonymous with being one of the most successful Springbok coaches. And yes, winning a World Cup makes you one of those. And we've won 3 World Cups with 3 different coaches.
And a better winning percentage.
I suppose when you also say legacy, it's how you conduct yourself thereafter. You know, you look at a Kitch Christie won a World Cup, and he conducted himself accordingly, like a World Cup coach.
Yeah.
You look at Jake. The reality is he tarnished that whole, he unbundled his whole legacy and his whole reputation when nobody speaks well of him, regardless of he won the World Cup. I think there's less talk about the 2007 World Cup win than any other.
It seems at 95.
Now you look at Rassie's success in the World Cup, and how he's positioned himself with pride and dignity, loyal to the brand, loyal to South Africans, honesty, integrity, all those things that we want in a Springbok coach.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that he's probably the most well-liked coach that's ever coached the Springboks, Mark?
I think without a doubt, and if you listen to the players, but over and above that, if you listen to the opposition coaches and the opposition players, that podcast with the Munster players talking about him. So when he arrived in Munster, and he arrived at such a difficult time, and all the emotion going around Munster, and he was just ingrained in that psyche, and he was willing to learn and change, and he said even though he was only there for 18 months, he grew so much as a human being. And he also understood that there was life beyond South African rugby. But what he also felt was we should never be weak compared to kind of where he was coaching. What I've loved about his reaction to winning the World Cup is you've never seen him. The only thing you knew was that he was back at SARU's offices on the 7th of January working. He's been very comfortable to be in the background and to allow Siya Kolisi and the Springboks their moment to say the players won it on the field. What I think creates that legacy is the way they won that World Cup, the planning that went into it, how they got the win against New Zealand away. They showed they were still vulnerable when they blew that lead at home. 2 minutes that decided. They weren't quite there yet in the World Cup, but they kind of got their game right. But the way they built to the Welsh semi-final, and I think he always thought that was going to be their toughest game.
I knew it was going to be.
And it came down to that one kick, with a couple of minutes to go. And then how they dismantled Eddie Jones and that England side. And if you think legacy, Eddie Jones was going to be defined by winning the World Cup, not losing it. Rassie was defined by the way he won it. And he's the hottest property in world rugby at the moment. And that's why I think, speaking to Mark Alexander, he says, whatever banks they got to break to keep him, they have to keep him here. But the one thing...
Geez, heck, I'll even give some of my salary, which isn't much, but to keep him here.
Look, and I would back Mark on all those comments he's made. Now, I certainly believe SA Rugby hasn't been in such a strong position. No. From a player point of view, from a depth point of view,
from a presidential point of view,
from a management, all the indicators are there, all the ticks are next to basically everything. And I believe, and I'll sit here and I'll have egg in my face, but I doubt that we will win the next World Cup again. I believe we've got enough to win back-to-back World Cups.
Yeah, and I think that then, look, to me, Rassie is godlike when it comes to rugby. But if he wins another World Cup, then geez, what else do you do?
Presidential status.
Yeah, Rassie for president.
Rassie for king, president.
Okay, well,
look, it's just on that as well, Kev. You look at New Zealand, and they've always refused to appoint anyone but a New Zealander as their coach. And there was a claim at one stage bringing an international coach here. What Rassie showed, and you just look at those clips and the way he gelled that Springbok side, he's got such a deep love and passion for this country, for the Springboks, because he's come through the system. He was born here and he was bred here. And you can't overstate or undervalue that. And if a Robbie Deans came or a Dave Rennie, yes, they're brilliant rugby coaches, but could they really understand South Africa? Could they really understand the nuances of this country? And that's what he did. Jake didn't quite do that. Kitch Christie was at a different era.
Yeah, but with Jake, it was all about Jake. It wasn't about the team. It was, me, myself, and I. And, sorry to interrupt you. I've seen that having played against underneath some foreign coaches, one specifically is Laurie Mains, and he almost tried to exercise his own personality on the South Africans. He tried to change our mannerisms and the way we engaged with each other and our strength in play and our personalities. He tried to undo that and implement a New Zealand culture. And on such a high level, it's more about management of players than actually coaching. Maybe lower levels, it can be successful. But I do agree with you, is that, Rassie's instilled that South African pride on all levels. And certainly broken the shackles of transformation as well. So, I mean,
Yeah, no, and well done to him. I mean, he deserves every success that he gets. And hopefully we can get him in here on the show so we can have a chat to him.
Hey man, Jock, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get on to the Super Rugby. Thanks, guys, for your insight on that. Little form starting to take place. Getting to see some of the teams, what they're capable of, what they're not capable of. Let's get on to the Blues Crusaders. 7.5 points the bookies think that the Crusaders will win by, so 8 or more. Or 8 is, What do you guys think of the Blues Crusaders this weekend?
No, it's Crusaders by at least 15.
Jeez, James,
yeah. The Blues. Now I'm really. Maybe I'm just biased. I'm not a big Blues fan. They lose their shape. They
great blue though.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's why I wore it, so I can. But Crusaders. I think they're going to come back strong. They obviously lost on the weekend to the Chiefs under Gatland, and that was a big win for the Chiefs.
Yes.
I think that the Crusaders will come back strong.
Marcus?
Crusaders by 10. I know it's in Auckland. You don't see the Crusaders losing back-to-back games, and credit more to the way the Chiefs played and the resilience they showed in that second half. And I think the Blues just don't have that kind of mongrel or that structure to upset the Crusaders like that. So I think a comfortable victory for the Crusaders.
And also, again, that game, that final try that was a nail in their coffin was also a moment of individual brilliance again. And we've seen that a lot of times in these very close encounters, where you've needed one or two players to have that individual brilliance and that standout rock star moment. And that was a moment for them which secured the win for the Chiefs.
Just the short,
that sunny ball offload
that
they referred to.
Yeah. I also think that the Crusaders will win, but I'm going to say by 10.
Okay.
Takes us to probably the most turgid game of the weekend, but it's being televised, so we'll talk about it. The Rebels, losers of 2, against the Warthogs.
Losers of 2.
Losers of 2. And the bookies can't separate these teams. What do you guys think?
I think we should rather bet on how many spectators are going to go to that game than the outcome of the game.
I don't even know it's about the spectators, it's about how many are going to watch it on telly. But as Nas would say, it's right applicable here. It could be a draw.
Okay, well, let's see. Where are we at on that? I mean,
I'm gonna say the Rebels.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the Rebels to beat the Tars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going Rebels because it's home ground, 7 points.
Okay, I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to go with the Warthogs by 5. I just liked them against what they did against the Crusaders. Brumbies was always going to be a bit tough because the Brumbies are top of the pecking order in the Australian conference, even though Australia is not really a tough conference to play. I think Ikeys could be in there and probably win that conference. Nothing disrespectful to Ikeys.
I agree with you. The rugby, the Australian conference is woeful and weak and uninspiring at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And downright crap.
I didn't want to say that.
No. Well, you said worse.
I think I've uttered one vulgarity already.
Vulgarity. What kind of word is that?
No, that's a word. Sunwolves versus the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's
2 undefeated teams.
Oh, this could be our ass kicking.
Okay.
No. Look, the Sunwolves have been known to have the upset, at home. They've shown that in previous seasons. But I just think the Chiefs in beating the Crusaders under Gatlin, they're a strong, well-balanced rugby side. And I think it could end up being a bit of a massacre, to be honest.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, they've rested Cruden and McKenzie and I think Sam Cane. It's on that All Black resting policy. That's where they put them out. So if they were playing, I'd say it could be 40 plus points, but I think more 15 to 20. They'll win comfortably.
Yeah, I think they'll win. The bookies have it at 19.5. I think that's a bit generous, taking into account that they've got the mighty Rudy Page playing and those 4 or 5 All Blacks resting. You know, I'm going to go with the Chiefs to win by 15. The Hurricanes versus the Sharks, the much improved Sharks, and I mean the way they dismantled the Highlanders last week was impressive, eh?
Yeah, you know, for me, what was impressive about that game is it wasn't that the Sharks dominated the game in certain aspects. It was the ability to, off the back foot and on turnover, turn those into attacking opportunities that landed up with tries. That was really impressive for me. And again, the pressure game, a bit of the bounce of the ball. But certainly, I mean, I've got egg in my face. I never thought that the Sharks would perform that well against the Highlanders. I think last week I even said that the Highlanders would beat the Sharks.
You certainly did, James.
I did, so I do apologise. I'm entitled to my opinion.
You are. You are indeed.
That's why you're here.
And life is not a popularity contest, guys.
No. Mark, Hurricane, Sharks?
Yeah, a tough one to pick. I mean, I was very surprised by the Sharks blowing away the Highlanders the way they did. I thought they would lose as well. Equally surprised that the Hurricanes came back in the last 10 minutes and beat the Jaguars. So I don't actually know what to make of this game. I'd like to think the Sharks would win, could win quite comfortably. And let's see how they go with that expectation. So I'm going to put on my South African patriotic loyal hat and say Sharks to win by 10. But I wouldn't bet anything on it.
So where's your hat?
So you sound,
or is it a figure?
It's Super Brew.
Does that mean you're somewhat patriotic then?
I wouldn't bet on it. I'll put my Super Brew on it. Sharks to win by 10. I wouldn't put any cash on it.
Yeah, I just wonder how much the traveling is going to have affected the Hurricanes over this. You know, they've Cape Town, they got blown out in Cape Town. They did the impossible as far as I was concerned. I mean, they should have easily, the Jaguars should have easily won that game. I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to have to pick the Hurricanes by 3. I've got, it's...
Well, look, going to Argentina, playing the Jaguars, and beating them there, has to say something for the team. Albeit that they were so pathetic against the Stormers.
I think we're not giving Mavericks enough credit here in Cape Town. I think it must have destroyed the Hurricanes.
Mavericks.
Yeah,
certainly.
Because there was nothing left in their tank when it came.
I know of Mavericks destroying a lot of married people's lives. So, Kevin, you say Hurricanes by 3?
Yeah, I'm gonna, begrudgingly, because I'd love to see the Sharks lay a beating on them. I'm not betting on the game, and quite frankly, I'm doing my video tomorrow with Moneyboy, and I'll make some predictions. But that won't be one that I'll be laying money on. It's I'll be cheering for the Sharks, but if it might...
Look, from a South African point of view, based on their performance last week, I would like to see them continue that trend and win. If they do win, it'll be by a small margin. But playing the Hurricanes...
Look, if they win, that puts down a big marker for them.
Absolutely. And they've shown how the South African teams, they're the one team that can be successful in New Zealand. Yeah. So based on that, I'll go Sharks with a small margin. Yeah.
My fear after a big game and a big win is always that it's tough to get up. Teams tend to target a win on the road. Going to New Zealand, you want to win one of those games. And when you win it and you feel like you've accomplished what you wanted to do, it seems to be a bit of a lull in the next game.
I think there's part of that that's correct. But at the same time, saying that is that sport is about confidence.
Yeah.
So when you got confidence and you win, it leads to further success, further self-belief. And if you've got self-belief, that is one challenge and one obstacle that you certainly overcome or that you're in control of.
Look, let's hope. I mean, if the Sharks win on Saturday, wow, that puts them at 3-0. Puts them in.
Well, I've said this. I think the Sharks have one of the best attacking backlines in the competition at the moment. That's my opinion.
Well, if they win, that means they've won 2 away games, and their schedule starts to get a bit easier. Whereas the Stormers, for example, who've won 2 in a row, they've got some more home games coming up and some games locally. But it puts the Sharks in a bit of a more of an advantageous situation than the Stormers. But it's a long season, which brings me to the Brumbies Highlanders.
In Australia, Brumbies, I think they're a poor side, but the Highlanders were awful against.
Well, they've had 17. They lost 17 players this year, didn't they? They've had 17 changes. So, in order to that's a
almost
team.
like taking 17 ingredients out of a nice plate of food.
It is. What does it leave you with? Yeah, exactly. So, where are we on Brumbies, James?
Yeah, I'd go Brumbies.
Yeah,
I'd certainly go Brumbies.
By
5.
10, Brumbies.
I'm going to go Brumbies by 7. Leads us to the big one. Lions, Stormers.
Stormers comfortably.
A lot of injuries, Mark.
They've lost Herschel Yankees, lost Jaco Kutsia.
Bonambi for the season.
Yeah, but I looked at that Lions side against the Reds. Thought they were diabolical. Reds were down to 13 players at one stage.
Yeah.
And they actually were leading. So I think...
Yeah, the Lions got annihilated at scrum time. I position them, they're frenetic. They like, it's almost like a team on acid. I refer to them like a hamster on a wheel. It does a lot but goes nowhere. I'm not really inspired by the Lions' style of rugby at the moment.
No, and like I said, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of changes there, a lot of good players exiting, and no, they look pretty bad. They could have easily lost the game against the Reds, and the Reds aren't a good side.
As Mark said, they were unable to capitalise on the 2 yellow cards at one stage. They even conceded a penalty and lost a scrum against a pack that had 1 player less than they had, with a knock-on the try line by Yankees again.
Yeah. Look, Scarra's a good hooker, eh?
No, there's nothing. Guys, there's nothing wrong with Scarra and Tabini. No. I must be honest, and I say this with utmost respect to Bongi. Great player, but there's nothing wrong with Scarra. So, I don't see it being such a major loss. Yes, I see it in the overall picture as a big loss, where you can have that depth. So if Scarra got injured, yes, I think the Stormers could be wanting in that position. But Scarra is an equally good replacement.
No, for sure. And he's as fit as a butcher's dog this year,
Yeah, and he won man of the match. Yeah. And he had a good performance.
And he's a hell of a nice guy. He's one of those guys that he's got an infectious person.
Us hookers normally don't like other hookers.
No, well, you don't like anybody.
No. Don't say that. You can't say that on camera, Kevin.
I'm sorry, James. I take that back. He likes himself.
Yeah, play nice with others.
Yes. So where are we going on the Stormers Lions?
Look, the Lions are going to be messy. They're going to be all over the ball. They're going to be falling on the ground. That's the one thing. They have the most players on the ground at ruck time. I think it's going to be a hard-fought encounter like all the South African games. I'd say the Stormers by 10.
Marcus?
I'd go closer to 10 than 15. If Yankees was there and Jakes was there at flank, I would have said 15 plus. But I think a comfortable 10 to 12 points.
Yeah, I'm going to say that the Stormers will win by 10. Their pack is too strong. They've still got talent in the back line. Got a strong Welshman playing for them. Yeah, I can't see them losing this game. So we're only
again, but in saying now, I'm saying the Stormers by 10. The one thing that the Stormers need to be cognizant of is they've had lulls in 2 of their games where they performed badly. In the first game for 25 minutes they were out of the game. Against the Bulls, there was a time there was 70% possession to the Bulls in possession and territory. So the Stormers just got to be mindful of that. that they don't have on these close games where sides capitalise on those dips in play.
Yeah, and it's impressive. I mean, if you're looking for a game to go under in points, you've got to look at the Stormers game because they haven't given up a point all season.
Well, there we go, and it's it shows the defence is amazing.
Yeah.
But you can't always just rely on a win on defence. You've got to score tries.
Yeah, that's true. And finally, the Jaguars versus the Reds. Are the Reds going to feel the backlash of the Jaguars this year? This game?
I don't know if it's such like a backlash of sorts, but I think they will win comfortably. 2 years ago when they played, they pumped them quite easily. I think 15 points to the Jaguars.
Pump.
They did pump them.
Are they going to pump them, James?
I think they're going to beat them.
Mark, I tend to agree. I think they're going to give them a good pumping.
Thank you, Kevin.
I think that it's going to be 15, 20. 15
pumps.
About my limit. Anyway, on that note, I think it's fair to leave it. And thank you guys for coming in before it degenerates into something far worse. I want to thank you guys. Thanks a lot, eh?
Cheers.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kevin.
Fuck's sakes, you guys. Pumping.